Hello, and thank you for joining us on Earth Day. My name is Melinda Tomeno. I manage environmental issues for the Associated General Contractors of America. With me is Les Snyder, the Executive Vice President of Infrastructure Construction of Brightline West. As an AGC officer, Les has stepped forward to serve as the liaison for our climate change initiatives within AGC's leadership. AGC is working to make sure our industry plays a lead role when it comes to reducing the climate impacts of the built environment. We want to take this opportunity to share with you the progress we have made, highlight a new tool that you can use to learn more about climate change and construction, and let you know about some of the upcoming educational sessions on this issue and how you can get involved in all of these efforts. But first, I want to turn to Les Snyder.
Thank you, Melinda. As you all know, the construction industry is the delivery vehicle for building a greener, more climate-friendly future. Of course, what we build has a far bigger impact on the environment than how we build it. But our industry is uniquely qualified to help public and private owners meet their climate objectives. As part of AGC's climate change initiative, a broad cross-section of our members have been meeting in small groups over the last several months to understand climate change implications in three key areas: the technology we use in our operations, ensuring the health and safety of our communities, and the supply chains we rely on for goods and services. Today, we will provide a brief update on those discussions and what has come out of them. I hope all of you will get involved as we work to make sure the construction industry is doing its part to operate efficiently and help our owners build more efficient projects. AGC of America has a clear role to play in helping the industry build a greener future. You can't just wish for it, you must build it. Thank you, Melinda.
Thank you, Les, for your leadership in this area. And now let's turn to the updates from our task force chairs. The first task force to report today is the Climate Change Task Force on Technology and Programs. I'd like to welcome Ty Edmondson, who chaired that task force, to give the report. He's also co-president of TA Loving Company and chair of the AGC Utility Infrastructure Division. Ty.
Thank you, Melinda. We've had a lot of good conversation. We've had great member involvement, and I really appreciate the opportunity to update you on where we are from a technology and programs perspective. Like Les said, one of our goals was to identify what our members think about climate change, what are the broad implications for the industry, and what conversations do we need to have as an association. We wanted to really create a good foundation to work from and to get in front of this issue. One of the things we've looked at is the operational efficiencies that we need to be looking for as it relates to climate change. Specifically, one of the things we've looked at is emissions and how we monitor, how we control, and how we work with that in the future. Our industry, we are what I call a low carbon intensity, and it just means we don't have one centralized source of emissions like a power plant. We have vehicles, we have equipment that emit small amounts. We wanted to focus on our equipment. We want to right size our equipment. We want to maintain our equipment. We want to recommend battery power where it makes sense, anti-idling policies. Overall, we wanted to have operational efficiency as a focus because that's where we have the biggest influence on a construction site. And a lot of the things we've looked at just make business sense. There are a lot of opportunities that we're all going to see, no matter what type of work you do, whether it's buildings, heavy civil, utility infrastructure, and then highway and transportation. There's going to be a lot of opportunities, a lot of conversation about resiliency in the infrastructure systems that we all rely on. It's really an exciting time in our business, I think, and it's going to be very interesting to see how this topic progresses and we change and modify as we need to in our industry. There's not a one-size-fits-all solution that's going to work across the country. Needs in the Southeast are going to be different than in the West, where we on the East Coast may be dealing with flood control, out West it may be drought and how we deal with some of those things. Transition time is another thing that we need to think about. There's a lot possible right now, so it can be frustrating to allow time for things to change. From a technology perspective, we've looked at how to monitor equipment emissions to what's going on in the diesel engine efficiency world. There's a lot of opportunities there. There'll be certain pieces of equipment that will always be operated with a combustible engine. There will be smaller pieces of equipment that make sense to be battery powered. So all that's being looked at now. The hybrids, there'll be alternative fuels. There'll be all kinds of things that are available to us. On the material side, that's where a lot of greenhouse gases are produced. And I think from our perspective, bringing us in at the right time to have our influence in the conversation with the engineers and architects we deal with on the options that are available are critical. There are a lot of good tools out there that can evaluate the carbon consumption that's required to produce materials, and then what that impact is at the local level, whether it's how the cement manufacturers are influencing the ready mix market, or the steel industry, the things that are going on in that market also. Like Les said, we just can't wish for a greener future. You have to build it. And I think we're at the right place at the right time. And I think our industry is going to change as a result of what we're looking at and the things we're evaluating. There are many tools out there that are available. We're just in an interesting time where we've really got to take advantage of the technology and how to better manage our sites, how to build that operational efficiency into everything we do, and really take advantage of that.
Thank you, Ty. It does seem as though an adequate transition period is going to be a common denominator for a lot of these discussions moving forward. The next task force to give an update is the Climate Change Task Force on Building Safe and Healthy Communities. That was chaired by Amy Hall, who is president of Ebony Construction. She is past chair of the AGC Highway and Transportation Division and the current AGC representative to the Mid-America Association of State Transportation Officials. Amy?
The Building Safe and Healthy Communities Task Force was designed to be able to identify the needs of the communities, as well as the best practices and best ways to engage communities, owners, and contractors, all people who are going to be working or who have worked on projects that are going through underserved communities. In order to be proactive and try to mitigate some of those challenges, Building Safe and Healthy Community Task Force has engaged the government agencies like the GSA. We've also engaged AASHTO, as well as community organizations who specialize in grassroots efforts. We came up with a one-pager that is able to help contractors, owners, and government agencies identify the needs of these communities and how best to serve them. And the contractors need to be proactive. It's very important because we are really the face of what is going on in these construction projects. So number one, the first thing we identified was engage early. Before the contract is let, engage the community and get them actively participating in this part of the process. Number two, building relationships first. It is so important to build a relationship of trust within the community. And so the community has developed a sense of trust with the contractor as well as the owner, which definitely helps make these projects go well for all stakeholders. Third, bring in third-party experts. Contractors oftentimes do not have the resources to be able to engage the community and send people out and really delve into this aspect. There are a lot of organizations and businesses that specialize in this grassroots community outreach. And so being able to engage these third parties early on in the process really helps make the process and the project go seamlessly. And lastly, anticipate concerns. If we can identify potential issues early on, we then can create a solution to solve the problem before it becomes a problem. And so that is what our task force has done extremely well. And we've done that and outlined these in both the one-page document, and it will also be outlined in our task force toolkit, which will be able to assist contractors and really anyone who is doing projects in underserved communities, really trying to be proactive and have a more awareness of the communities, engaging people early on in the project so our projects can be beneficial to all stakeholders involved.
Thank you, Amy. I do want to let you know in a few minutes, I will be sharing where you can find some of those resources that Amy mentioned on AGC's website. For now, let's turn next to the last task force, which is the Climate Change Task Force on Impacts to the Supply Chain. Jeffrey Harper chaired that task force, and he is also president of Harper Construction Company and chair of AGC's Federal and Heavy Construction Division. Jeff?
All right. Well, our task force dealing with climate change was asked to come in and look at how the supply chain could be affected or would be affected by climate change and climate change policies. We interviewed on a monthly basis over this last year the National Stone, Sand, and Gravel Association, the Portland Cement Association, the National Ready Mix Concrete Association, the American Wood Council, the National Association of Manufacturers, the American Trucking Association, and the Waterways Council. And they volunteered to participate in some rigorous discussion on climate change and climate change policies and how we could all work together to get to the goals that are being put before us from the government, if you will. So each of them in the big picture talked about how over the last several years they've been measuring, tracking, setting goals within their own organizations and how to comply with the regulations that have been gradually unfolding over the years and now have specific timeframes and years to meet in the future. So notably, one of the concerns that we have had was about the regulatory requirements and how to get there collectively in the least amount of time. And the overarching item that we got from each of them is it is going to take time. And one example was going from fuel to diesel took roughly 70 years. So hopefully it won't take that long. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take some money as well. So some of the key findings that our task force came up with, large scale transformational changes take time. And unrealistic goals will undoubtedly remove some products from the industry altogether and could lead to scarcity and higher prices that will radically affect the supply chain. Another key finding was that supply chains are global. Without domestic energy production and manufacturing, the supply chain is heavily impacted by global conflicts right now, as we can see in international policies. One of the examples was with magnesium, when pressure was put on China prior to the Olympics for some of their output. They complied by slowing down the production of magnesium, which was non-friendly activity. Well, that in turn affected aluminum, which needs magnesium. So the aluminum manufacturers were adversely affected, and that radically increased the cost of aluminum that we experienced. Another is lithium. Everyone's trying to march forward with the electrification of the vehicles. Lithium is one of the products, and we found out that only 1% of lithium is manufactured in the United States. So there would need to be policies and money invested and time invested to figure out how to do that without total reliance upon lithium from other countries. Again, we're talking about the time for transition. There's technology advancements that have taken place, tremendous ones over the last several years and decades. And we need to educate people on what has already transpired, but also realize that it takes a while to do that. Another one of our key findings is large scale investment really needs to be provided here. Financial concerns are what drive the manufacturer's decisions relative to redesigning their facilities. And they can't do it without heavy government investment. And they particularly said grants are what is going to be needed, not just loans. Tax structure needs to be revised, and time, once again, needs to be provided. The regulatory environment can be tough, and some of the compliance with the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act appear to be potential impediments on keeping manufacturers from reshoring. Policies that drive the harvesting of key materials or manufacturing processes to leave the United States may lead to greater environmental harms as well, while these products would be made in other countries that have no protections at all, and the climate is all connected. We learned also that consumer is a powerful motivator for change, and much of the greener climate activities the manufacturers have been taking so far have been a result of the consumer requests. The one thing that we did learn, kind of to wrap it up, is that the use of fossil fuels is not really going away. We all need to learn how to do it better, cleaner for the environment, but it needs to be in collaboration with all of the more energy efficient products and green energy tools that we have. And we need to press forward together to really continue on and not create havoc in the supply chain. So it was a great opportunity, and hopefully more of you will get involved with how AGC can be a big part of the climate change construction policies in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I want to thank each of the task force chairs again, as well as the many members that were involved in this several months long process. It was a commitment that they did not take lightly. Many have chosen to continue to meet to ensure that we understand the implications for construction and have resources available for members. Speaking of which, I want to take a moment before we close today's program to share with you some of those resources that were mentioned today. I'm going to share my screen so you can all see the climate change toolkit that's available from our website. If you go to www.agc.org, you'll be able to access this from the environmental section. We'll also include a link in the show notes. We organized this toolkit the same way that we structured the task forces. So there's one on communities, supply chains, and technology and programs. I'm just going to briefly mention some of the resources in each of these so that you can explore them later on your own in more detail. First, under the communities tab, you'll find the talking points and those tips to engage in the community that Amy had mentioned. These are PDF documents, so you can print them off and share them as you like. You'll also find resources for community resilience and sustainability, as well as the federal government initiatives on environmental justice. Under the supply chain tab, we included general resources on supply chains, as well as links to some of the key associations that represent construction supply chains. This is their links to their climate, energy, and sustainability resources. You'll be able to go directly to their resources on this topic. And lastly, under the climate change technology and programs, there's a lot of resources here for you, including definitions, some government and third-party resources, as well as carbon calculators and greenhouse gas and environment social governance reporting tools. These might become increasingly more important moving forward. So if you want to get a head start, there's some resources here that will catch you up on what's going on. And lastly, I wanted to share our website for the upcoming Construction Safety, Health, and Environmental Conference. This is also available through the AGC website. We will have several sessions that kind of kickstart our educational efforts in this area. So there'll be some sessions on climate, as well as building a sustainability plan. If you're interested, please go check that out. Lastly, I just want to thank you for taking the time to hear about AGC's climate change initiative. If you are interested in being involved in this area, please reach out to me. My contact information is on AGC's environmental webpage, as well as in the show notes below. Thank you again, and have a great day.